Family, I want you to hear me today. You were never designed to carry what only God can handle. Some of us are walking through life with burdens so heavy they're bending our souls. We're worrying about tomorrow, replaying yesterday, and stressing over things we can't control. But God is standing right beside us saying, give it to me. I can carry what you can. Worry is a thief. It steals your sleep, your peace, your joy, and your focus. And the tragedy is that worry doesn't change anything except you. It drains you, weakens you, distracts you. But God has a better way. He invites us to trade our worry for his peace, our fear for his faithfulness, and our anxiety for his assurance. Listen, now trusting God is not pretending everything is fine. Trusting God is recognizing that even when everything isn't fine, he still is. Trust is choosing to believe that God knows what you don't, sees what you can't, and can do what you're unable to do. Some of us are praying but still holding on. We call God our provider but panic every time a bill comes. We call him our healer but fear every symptom. We call him our defender but fight battles that only he can win. You can't hand God your problem with one hand and hold on to your worry with the other. Release it. Leave it. Let him handle it. God specializes in the impossible. He's the God who parts seas, calms storms, shuts lions' mouths, and brings dead things back to life. If he can handle all that, he can certainly handle what's been keeping you up at night. Here's the truth. The moment you stop worrying is the moment you start winning, because you stop fighting in your strength and start living in his. When you trust God, you stop reacting to fear and start responding to faith. So today, make the choice. Tell your heart, I will not worry. Tell your mind, God's got this. Tell your fear, you are not in control anymore. Let God handle it because he will. Don't worry because he's working. Trust God because he's trustworthy. You were not created to carry burdens that only God can handle. Yet many of us live as though everything depends on us. We wake up with pressure sitting on our chests, go through the day with a tightness in our minds, and lie down at night with worries whispering, what if? We try to solve every problem, fix every situation, control every outcome, and protect ourselves from every possible loss. But that's not how God designed the human heart. Your shoulders are not wide enough, your strength is not great enough, and your knowledge is not deep enough to hold the weight of every care, fear, and uncertainty in life. Only God has that kind of capacity. When we take on loads that exceed our spiritual limits, we feel the effects immediately. We become tired in our minds, short-tempered in our emotions, and restless in our spirits. Worry begins to distort our perspectives. Fear magnifies the future into something monstrous. Anxiety takes small problems and makes them feel impossible. That's because we are carrying something we were never meant to lift. It's like trying to pick up a mountain with bare hands. No matter how determined or sincere we are, it's still too heavy for us. And the longer we try to carry it, the more worn down we become. God invites us to give him what is too much for us because he knows how he made us. He formed us with a dependence on him woven into our very being. Just like your lungs were created to depend on oxygen, your soul was created to depend on God. When you try to breathe without air, you suffocate. When you try to live without surrender, you collapse under the weight of worry and fear. Trusting God isn't just a spiritual suggestion, it's a soul necessity. The burdens of life become lighter the moment they are transferred into his hands. The problem is not that God can't handle what troubles us. The problem is that we often refuse to let go. We cling to our issues because we think that worry equals responsibility. We convince ourselves that if we stop stressing, something might go wrong. But worry doesn't keep life in order. God does. Worry doesn't prevent trouble. God does. Worry doesn't secure your future. God does. When you insist on carrying everything yourself, you are living in a role God did not assign to you. You were called to trust, not to take control. You were created to rest in him, not to replace him. Think of a child trying to carry a load that belongs to the parent. The child struggles, strains, and cries under the weight, while the parent stands ready to lift it effortlessly. The parent isn't angry at the child. They simply want the child to trust their strength instead of relying on their own. That's exactly how God sees you. He is not frustrated with your weakness. He is frustrated when you refuse to hand him what is breaking you. He stands beside you, ready to lift the burden, ready to carry the weight, ready to take what you cannot handle. But he will not snatch it from your hands. You must give it to him. Your life begins to shift the moment you realize you don't have to hold everything together. You don't have to know everything, fix everything, or solve everything. That's God's job. Your job is to trust. When you release the weight, when you finally say, God, this is too big for me, peace begins to flow into the places where worry once lived. Strength begins to rise where exhaustion once sat. Hope begins to grow where fear once ruled. You were not created to carry everything. You were created to walk with the one who can. Worry steals peace but changes nothing, while trust restores peace and invites God to move. Worry is one of the most deceptive habits of the human heart because it feels like action even though it accomplishes absolutely nothing. You can toss and turn all night, replaying conversations in your mind, imagining future scenarios, analyzing every detail as if your thoughts could control outcomes. But the truth is, worry never fixes the problem. It only fixes your eyes on the problem. It drains your energy, clouds your judgment, and distracts your heart from the one who actually has the power to intervene. Worry is like running on a treadmill. There is a lot of motion, but no progress. You end up exhausted, but still in the same place. It takes from you without giving anything back. Peace is replaced with panic. Calm is replaced with chaos. And while worry spirals inside of you, the situation outside of you remains unchanged. Worry does not prevent trouble. It only prepares your heart to be overwhelmed by it. It does not create solutions. It creates stress. It does not stop what you fear. It strengthens what you fear. Imagine holding a glass of water. The glass itself is not heavy. At first, lifting it feels effortless, but if you hold it for 5 minutes, your arm starts to feel strained. Hold it for 30 minutes, and your muscles start shaking. Hold it for an hour, and your arm is numb with pain. The weight of the glass didn't change. Your ability to carry it weakened over time. Worry is the same way. A concern that initially seems small becomes unbearable when you hold it longer than you should. Life becomes heavier not because the problems grow, but because your soul becomes weary. Trust, however, does what worry never can. Trust replaces the internal storm with the stillness of God's presence. Trust shifts your focus from the limits of your ability to the greatness of God's power. Trust is not passive. It is active surrender. It is the decision to move your problem from your hands into God's hands. When you trust, you no longer carry the burden alone. Instead, you place it on the shoulders of the one who holds the universe together, the one who never sleeps, never stresses, and never struggles to fulfill his promises. When you begin to trust God, something remarkable happens. You create room for him to move. Worry crowds out God's peace, but trust invites it in. Worry closes the door to divine intervention because the focus stays on your strength. Trust opens that door wide because it acknowledges God as the solution. When your heart stops trying to control everything, it becomes free to receive what God is already working out on your behalf. Trust doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you look at reality through the lens of God's sovereignty. Situations may not change immediately, but your spirit changes the moment you choose trust over worry. You begin to breathe again. You begin to think clearly. You begin to sense hope rising within you. God often works in the spaces where worry once lived. When worry leaves, faith has room to grow. There is a calm that only comes to those who trust God, a calm that defies circumstances. It is not the calm of having everything under control. It is the calm of knowing the one who controls everything. Trust whispers, God is with me, God is for me, and God is working, even when I can't see it. And when your heart believes that, worry loses its power. You were never meant to live in a cycle of fear, stress, and anxious thoughts. You were to walk in peace, real peace, God-given peace, peace that settles your soul even when storms are raging. Worry steals peace, but trust restores it. Worry closes your hands around fear, but trust opens your hands to receive God's help. When you trust God, you don't just feel better. You make space for Him to do what only He can do. Trusting God means believing He is faithful even when circumstances aren't favorable. This kind of trust goes deeper than feelings, deeper than comfort, and deeper than what our eyes can see. It is easy to trust God when everything is lining up just right. When bills are paid, relationships are smooth, health is stable, and doors are opening. But real trust is not revealed in the sunshine, it is revealed in the storm. It is forged in moments when nothing around you looks like what God promised, yet you choose to believe Him anyway. That is where genuine faith lives. Life will always present situations that make faith uncomfortable. There will be seasons where prayers seem unanswered, where the road ahead is unclear, and where every step feels heavy. You may face moments where the future looks uncertain, resources feel insufficient, and circumstances contradict what you know God told you. In those moments, trust is not about understanding what God is doing. It is about believing that He knows what He is doing. It is choosing to stand on God's character instead of your circumstances. When life is falling apart, trusting God might feel illogical. Your emotions may resist it. Your mind may argue against it. Fear may whisper that God has forgotten you or that things will never get better. But trust is not rooted in emotion or logic. It is rooted in truth. And the truth is that God's faithfulness is not dependent on your situation. He does not lose power when life gets hard. He does not become less good because the season becomes painful. He does not change His mind when circumstances change around you. His promises remain intact. His presence remains constant, and His purpose remains in motion. It is important to understand that faith does not deny difficulty. Faith defies hopelessness. Trust does not pretend that everything is fine, but it refuses to accept that circumstances have the final say. Trust looks at brokenness and still believes God can restore. Trust stands in lack and still believes God will provide. Trust faces sickness and still believes God is healer. Trust walks through the valley and still believes God is shepherd. This kind of trust is courageous because it confronts reality without surrendering to fear. There will be moments when God does not move in the way you expected. There will be times when the timing seems slow, the journey feels long, and the answers come differently than you prayed for. Trusting God means releasing your expectations of how He should work and embracing confidence in how He will work. It means acknowledging that God's wisdom is greater than your understanding and that His plan is bigger than what you can see from where you stand. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually God preparing something better. Sometimes what feels like a setback is God setting up a breakthrough. Sometimes what feels like an ending is God making room for a new beginning. Trust grows strongest in seasons of uncertainty. When you cannot rely on your own strength, God invites you to rely on His. When you come to the end of your understanding, He becomes your guide. When you are weak, He becomes your strength. Your circumstances may shift, but God's character does not. He remains faithful when life is unpredictable. He remains steady when everything else shakes. He remains present when others walk away. He remains good even when situations are painful. The real depth of trust is show. When you say, God, I don't understand, but I still believe you. Things don't look good, but I know you are good. I'm uncomfortable, but I know you are working. I'm unsure, but I know you are faithful. That kind of trust moves the heart of God and strengthens the heart of His people. It is the kind of trust that leads you through storms without breaking, through trials without losing hope, and through uncertainty with a peace that makes no sense except for the fact that God is with you. You cannot give God your problem while holding on to your worry. Release it fully. This truth speaks to the inner conflict many people experience. On the surface, we say we trust God. We pray, we worship, we declare that He is in control. But deep within, we often cling to the very things we asked him to take. It's as if we put our problems on God's altar, but before we walk away, we pick them up again and slip them back into our pockets. That is not surrender. That is spiritual tug of war. And in that struggle, worry always wins because we haven't truly let go. Letting go is not an easy thing. Worry convinces us that if we stop thinking about the problem, something might go wrong. Fear whispers that we are irresponsible if we're not constantly analyzing every detail. Anxiety tries to convince us that control equals safety, but control is an illusion and worry is a cruel master. You can't carry the weight of God's job and expect to have God's peace. When you cling to worry, your hands are too full to receive what God wants to give you. Surrender requires a shift. Emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. It is the decision to stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios and start rehearsing God's promises. It is choosing to trust God enough to let him be God. Many people ask God to intervene while secretly preparing their own backup plan just in case he doesn't come through. But real surrender leaves no backup plan. It leaves room for God to move. It says, Lord, I trust your timeline, your method, your wisdom, and your outcome. I'm releasing this because I know you can handle it far better than I ever could. When you hold on to worry, it creates spiritual interference. It blocks your ability to hear God clearly because your mind is too noisy. It interferes with peace because anxiety is competing for space in your heart. It interferes with faith because you're giving more attention to what scares you than to the one who sustains you. But when you release the situation fully, clarity comes, peace comes, rest comes, because your heart is no longer divided between trusting God and trusting yourself. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying. It does not mean you ignore responsibility. It means you allow God to take responsibility for the parts you cannot control. You still act with wisdom, but you no longer act out of fear. You still make decisions, but you no longer make them based on panic. You still move forward, but now you move with God's strength instead of your own. There is power in a released burden. God can only heal what you stop hiding. He can only fix what you stop clutching. He can only carry what you stop gripping. When you let go, you are not losing control. You are gaining divine support. You are not stepping into uncertainty. You are stepping into surrender. And that surrender creates space for miracles, for answered prayers, for open doors, and for breakthroughs that worry could never achieve. Picture a person drowning because they're fighting the water. The more they struggle, the deeper they sink. But the moment they stop fighting and allow themselves to float, the water lifts them. That is what surrender does. Worry makes you sink. Release makes you rise. As long as you keep fighting to control everything, life will feel heavy. But when you release control to God, His grace begins to carry you. It takes courage to let go, but it also takes exhaustion. Most people finally surrender, not because they suddenly trust more, but because they finally realize they cannot carry anymore. But you don't have to wait until you break to release what is hurting you. You can lay it down now. You can hand it over now. You can decide today that this burden does not belong to you. And once you release it fully, your heart, your mind, your spirit, your emotions, God steps in fully. You cannot give God your problem while holding on to your worry. But when you truly let go, God begins to work in ways you never imagined. Victory begins when you stop relying on your own strength and start resting in God's power. Many people spend their lives pushing, struggling, forcing, and exhausting themselves because they believe everything depends on their effort. They try to fight battles with limited energy, limited understanding, and limited ability. But every time you fight purely in your own strength, you are battling with a handicap. You are relying on human limitation instead of divine power. Real victory, lasting, unshakable, supernatural victory comes when you stop striving in your own might and begin trusting in God's strength. Human strength was never meant to be the source of your success. It was meant to be the vehicle through which God's strength flows. The greatest breakthroughs in your life will not come from your willpower, your intelligence, your resources, or your strategy. They will come from God stepping into the situation and doing what you could never do on your own. As long as you insist on doing everything yourself, you block the very power that is designed to help you. But the moment you surrender your effort to God's ability, you step into a realm where victory is not only possible, it's promised. Relying on your own strength creates pressure. You start feeling the weight of every outcome. You become anxious about things going wrong because you believe you are the one who must keep everything right. You fear failure because you believe success depends on you alone. That mindset breeds stress, frustration, and burnout. And even worse, it blinds you to the fact that God has already made provisions for the very things you're trying to force. When you rely on you, you feel drained. But when you rely on God, you feel carried. Resting in God's power does not mean inactivity. It means dependence. It means you work, but you work with God's strength behind you. You move, but you're guided by His wisdom. You step forward, but you walk in His authority. It becomes a partnership where you show up, but He shows out. You give your obedient effort, but He gives supernatural results. When God's power is behind your steps, the things that once overwhelmed you become things you can overcome. There is a peace that comes with resting in God's power, a peace that removes panic, eliminates fear, and silences worry. When you know the outcome does not rest on your limited strength, you are free to move with confidence. You stop second-guessing every decision. You stop being paralyzed by the what-ifs. You stop revisiting fear-based thoughts. Instead, you begin to walk with boldness because your heart knows you are backed by a power far greater than yourself. Think about what happens when God's power enters a situation. Seas part, walls fall, giants crumble, wars cease, storms calm, and impossible suddenly becomes possible. This is the same God who is willing to fight for you, guide you, protect you, and carry you. But He does not force Himself into your battles. He waits for you to stop fighting alone and invite Him to fight with you. The moment you release the battle into His hands, He releases His strength into your life. Relying on God's power doesn't remove challenge, but it removes defeat. It doesn't stop the storm from coming, but it ensures you won't be destroyed by it. It doesn't prevent opposition, but it guarantees that opposition cannot overcome you. When God fights for you, victory is not a possibility. It is the inevitable outcome. So many people lose peace, lose joy, and lose strength because they are trying to win battles only God is equipped to fight. But the moment you lay down your exhaustion and say, Lord, I can't, but I know you can, you shift from human effort to divine empowerment. That shift changes everything. Victory begins where self-reliance ends. It starts the moment you choose to let God's power be the force that carries you, guides you, and sustains you. That is where true victory lives, in His strength, not yours.